Thursday Love. Thursday Love.
There we go. Okay. Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Hey, everybody. Come on in. Come on in the room. Welcome to Thursday Love. Come on in. All right. Welcome to Thursday Love. Tonight, I have a special guest with me who's going to be my co-host. I'm so excited about her being up here. My husband always dips out on me on this one. But I'm grateful because it's a real reason why. But Zariah is going to stand in for him tonight. So he's going to greet the people.
Oh, hello. My name is Zariah.
So hey everybody, welcome. Come on in. For those that are here, hit your share button. Amen. Hit your share. I'm so churchy. Hit your share button. Tag your friends, tag your family. Come on in. Tonight is a very special session. See, Uncle Hall said, hey.
Hello.
Jesus Christ. So welcome everybody to Thursday Love. Tonight edition. This is the next to the last one for the season. And I am closing out. This will be my last time from Thursday Love for this year, for this season, and then we break for the summer. This year, 2021, has been a great year as far as Thursday Love is concerned. We have dove right into some crazy, exciting, but yet serious and intentional topics this year. We talked about the singles in February. We went to marriage and ministry in March. April, we hit some other topics. I can't think of them right now, but then even in May, we went to mental health. And we even had some psychiatrists up here. We had counselors, mental health counselors up here. We really touched on some serious topics this year. And but I wasn't going to let the year go by without continuing the series that I started last year. For many that know, my mother passed away in 2019. I wouldn't say unexpectedly, but it was abruptly, and it was not. We didn't see it coming really, but we knew some things were taking place for it to happen. So let's just say it was just hard. Still is. So the topic tonight is on grief. And so last year I had a couple of panelists to join me because they were within their first year. Because last year I was experiencing my year of first. Whoever's lost someone, you have your year of first. You know, the first birthday without them, the first anniversary without them, holidays without them, and you go through these different series of emotion. A lot of us deal with grief in different ways. Everybody's different, and we all handle it differently. In my case, I wasn't able to grieve immediately. It took months for me to grieve because not only did the same day my mom passed was also the same day I found out my sister had a brain tumor. So I had to take on the work of burying my mom and funeralizing my mom and preparing all of that for the family, as well as making sure that my sister was taken care of because 2 weeks later she had brain surgery. And so it was just a lot on my plate. And so to this day, I'm still grieving. Grieving, it comes in waves. It comes in emotions at different times, different triggers. Everybody is not so easy to talk about their grief or what they're going through. And sometimes grief is not necessarily someone you have lost. Grief could be a loss of a relationship. Some people grieve divorces. Some people grieve relationships they have with friends because they're just not there anymore. It's not the same anymore. And sometimes it's just hard for certain people to talk about. But on tonight, because it is June, I wanted to highlight our fathers. And so we have 4 special panelists that are going to be up here with us tonight. They're very dear to my heart. I love them all. I met them all through church, which is a great thing. But at the end of the day, they have become sisters and a brother to me. And so tonight they're going to share their story on grief. and the loss of a father. So without further ado, we're going to bring them in. And so y'all know how we do on Thursday Love. If you want to interact, if you have a question or if you want to comment, feel free to do so. Once again, share this with your family and friends, and let's talk about this. This is something that shouldn't be hidden. This is not something that should be concealed. The only way we can heal through this is if we talk through it together. So let's bring Crystal, Dion, Rhonda, and none other than our very own Mr. Steven. Steven made it, y'all. Steven made it.
Hey.
You made it.
Welcome, guys. Welcome, you guys. Thank you guys for coming on. Thank you guys for tuning in with us and accepting this. And once again, I appreciate y'all for doing this with us or for us. It means a lot.
Absolutely. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you for having us. With me.
Look at Steven. He's a veteran.
He done been up here all year. And Zariah is new.
I'm just excited to be here, everybody.
All right. So let's get right on into it. Do anybody want to introduce themselves? Do anybody want to just say, "Hey, this is who I am"? Y'all want to open up that way for the people who may not know you?
Sure.
Just a little bit about yourself. You ain't gotta give a whole resume, just a little bit.
Hi, everybody. I am Rhonda Bradley. I am currently an assistant principal at the greatest school in public schools, Eastway Elementary, in the River Church. And I met Sherry at North Carolina Central, and the rest is history. 3 nieces later.
Yes, right.
All right, I guess I'll go next. Rhonda is blessed to have one of the greatest sisters on the planet. Yes, truly. And
that's right,
Crystal. My name is Crystal. I'm an educator, been teaching for 15 years. I'm teaching kindergarten virtually. So soliciting prayers, 12 more days, 12 more days. Pray my strength. Been in education 15 years. Also a member of the River Church. Shout out to Bishop God being the River Church. I met Sherry through my sister Rhonda, and I've been fortunate that her friends have just kind of become my friends, and her nieces and nephews have kind of become my nieces and nephews. So just glad to see you all and glad to be here. Thanks for the invite again.
Amen. Dion, go ahead, because Steven, he he's special.
No problem. My name is Dion Blackwell. I am fortunate and blessed to be the owner and director at Growing Legacy Early Learning Center, which I consider to be one of the wonderfulest school child care centers in Durham. I happen to be a member of one of the best churches I love in the city of Durham, United for Christ Church. And I met Sherry through church. And I was very, very, very young when I met Miss Sherry, but she has been the same since the time that I met her. Wonderful woman, wonderful talents, creative, all of that. So
thanks, Dion.
You're welcome.
And hello, everybody. I am Stephen Colonel, and y'all know about me. I mean, I'm from Durham, born and raised. I have attend church where I met Sherry at the Word Empowerment Church, and that's where I met Rhonda a whole bunch of years ago. I've known Dion for a number of years through school. And Crystal just came into my life at the river, and she's been amazing ever since that. And I just love what I do. You know, been working at UNC Healthcare for now 8 years. And so I'm just glad to be a part tonight.
All right. So everybody is here and everybody is truly introduced. So we're going to get right on into it because we're not going to belabor the hour any longer. Rhonda, do me a favor and start us off. Give me your definition of grief.
My definition of grief is processing the loss of someone and what life is like living without them. There's no time constraint to that. There's no way of, maneuvering that. There's no one way of maneuvering that. It is just literally day by day, taking it one day at a time, walking through the process of what does life look like minus this person.
Okay. So Crystal and Rhonda, I would like for y'all to begin. Crystal, more so I want you to go first, then Rhonda, then Stephen, then Dion. And sharing your story with us about your fathers. So
Okay.
Crystal, can you go first?
So, piggybacking off of Rhonda, grief also is the loss of a person. But for me, I think I started grieving actually before I lost my dad. It's just the emotion of the fact that I'm helpless and I there's nothing I can do to fix it. So, my dad passed in 2013. He started getting sick. He actually started his health started declining in 2002. Was my senior year of high school actually, and he was my pastor. He was my principal. He was my parent. So
Wow.
he was just the three P's, pastor, yeah, the three P's. And so his health started declining. He called me in the office one day with this letter from the doctor. He had met with the staff, so I immediately started crying because I'm like, all these big words equal death. So I was like, Daddy, I don't know what this means. This is just a lot. So anyway, his health started declining, took him out of work. In 2012, he had both of his legs amputated. Stayed in the hospital from February to June. Came home June 1st, actually. And we learned to live life as normal as possible, using transfer boards, wheelchairs, whatever case may be, just getting around. He still preached, had his little hub around, and we just lived, as normal as a life as could be with a man with no legs. And then um, January the 18th, I believe, we got a phone call. They said you can come to the hospital. So we left work, rushed to the hospital. And the crazy part is when I first got the call, I was like, oh, I ain't gonna leave work. I'll just go after work. That called my mom. She was at work. Clearly everybody at work. My dad in the hospital, but we all at work. So that says a lot about how we were raised. We didn't miss any days of work. So anyway, went to work. I was like, I went to tell my boss. I said, my dad's sick. I said, but I'm just gonna leave after work. And they were like, you sure? I'm like, yeah, I just leave, right after school. But then my mom called back because the hospital had called her back. So after the second call, I was like, okay, we're gonna use wisdom here. And anyway, we left. On the way down there, myself and my brother were riding together. And my mom, they don't tell me stuff because they know I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna cry anyway. So that's just kind of how that goes. Being in Burlington, I cried from Burlington till we got to Duke. Till we got to Chapel Hill. So my dad passed January 21st, and it was just at the time too, and we laugh about this. I was his favorite at the time. So one thing about you had to know about my dad, he was have my sister. He like, you're my favorite, right? You my favorite. I love you, my favorite. But then when I was around, he like, you're my favorite, right? You my favorite. So we all, had our chances, but during his passing, he was closer in location. So I would just go and talk all night long. He would sleep all day and talk all night. So we had this bond and this form. So when he died, I just felt like, I lost a part of me. My best friend, I could talk to him about anything. Stuff that most people like, you talk to your daddy like that? I'm like, yeah, I talk to my daddy like that. So I went through the whole denial part of like, I know he's sick, but he ain't this sick. And then I went to the point where I was like, anybody who knows him knows he was a pastor, he was a preacher. I remember as a kid, he would run 17, 18 weeks of revival. And I was like, God, he's done these things for you, with no legs, he's still preaching. So can you meet me halfway? If I got to give up a leg or a kidney or something, I'm willing to do that. You know, I need you to try to meet me halfway because I don't want to lose him. And furthermore, I'm like, you know, all these things he did for you, you know, can get a little compensation on this end. And so it was hard, and I'll admit I was angry. I didn't go to church until I came to my hometown. Somebody gonna tell my mom, but I don't care. But I didn't go to church. Because every time I went to church, I just boo-hooed and cried like the whole service, and then the ushers coming over, and I'm like, it's just too many theatrics. So I went for a while. I didn't go to church. You know, I still prayed, and I was like, God, you're gonna have to help me because I just felt like I couldn't go on. So it was just rough, and you know, it still is. Some days are good, some days are bad. It's been 8 years, and this January, I probably cried like it was 2013. So
Right.
sorry,
Now,
Ronnie.
it's a reason why, you know, I could have just asked Rhonda or I could have just asked Crystal, but it was a reason I wanted both of you up here because people don't realize, a lot of times people don't realize that how people in the same household deal with it differently. And so I wanted to hear your share of the story, Crystal, and now I want to hear Rhonda's ask a question. This internet is acting stupid. Go ahead.
All right, so our experience was definitely different. I remember like after my father passed, and my sister was just like, you know, I didn't see it coming. Like I knew he was sick, but he wasn't that sick. And I remember thinking to myself like, no, he was that sick. And I think it was because we, as my sister said, we had learned to function with him without legs. One of my fondest and favorite memories of my dad is actually the day he had his legs amputated. You know, they take him to the recovery room. They tell us, hey, it's going to be about 3 hours before he comes out. So my pastor was there, Apostle J.L. Spence. Everybody knows that is my dad for life. He was there, Lady Sue, and they said, well, you know what? Let's go eat. You guys have been here all day. You haven't eaten. We go eat. We are at Old North Carolina Barbecue at the time. Literally, food barely gets to the table. And we get a phone call from my dad. We're like, first of all, you're still supposed to be under anesthesia in the recovery room. How are you calling us? And so one of the members of the church had gotten there in the in-between time. And because he was up, they let her see him. And he's like, call my wife and them. He said, I'm pretty sure they went to eat because I'm not supposed to be up this early. You know, so he calls, we're eating. We are all like, why are you on the phone? So we get back to the hospital and it was like perfect time. And we get back and we're waiting in the hallway and they're wheeling him back to his room. And all you hear is like, thank you, God. Thank you, God. And we're like, and all he keeps saying is, they took my legs, but they didn't take my lips. And just talking about the fact that he could still praise, completely shut UNC Chapel Hill Hospital down. Whatever floor we were on, like we are crying.
At the time,
family aunts, we are just like, you know, just all over the place at that moment. But my dad really taught me how to suffer, and he taught me like he was still preaching even until the day he died. And he used to always tell us, I want to die on the way to preach, while I'm preaching, or coming from preaching. Right. And so in our mind, we expected that to be like a literal, physical, you know, on the way to the pulpit, standing up at the pulpit, or leaving. And it was just so different. And so as my sister said, I was not shocked when my dad transitioned. My sister and I, man, that night at the hospital, we stayed there, y'all, for hours. We sang every song we've ever known my dad to sing. We did videos. We did some of everything. And he couldn't respond at that time, but the doctor had told us he can hear and process what you're saying, but he doesn't have the strength to respond. I remember, you know, once he died, I just automatically put on like my strength hat. I knew my mom was devastated. They had been married for 30 plus years, literally grown up together, got married when she was 20, he was 19. And so I went into that mode. We planned the funeral. We did the funeral. My church was there in large number. We handled everything. It was not until months later that I actually like really broke. One Sunday morning in We Church on Holloway Street, after praise and worship, and I almost broke during praise and worship, and I was like fighting. And I remember Otis was leading, and in the middle of leading, like he turned around and he saw me, and he turned back and looked, and I acted like I was worshiping because I knew if he figured out what was happening, it was going to ruin the whole end of praise and worship. And so it took me a little while to grieve, and then it just took time to process. But I realized one of the things I did, like because my dad died in January, it's like, man, you live this whole year. So every single first hit us in that 1 year. I mean, you know, Father's Day, right after Father's Day was my birthday, right after that was his birthday. Even before that was my mom's birthday. So we literally hit every single first. And it was rough, but we just rallied as a family. Like we made sure that for all of those first, we were all together.
Right.
Because it just was such a big deal. And it, for me, I just grieved for a long period of time because I think I just held it in so long.
Mm-hmm.
And I was strong for everybody else. I didn't want my mom to see us break too much because I knew she was, you know, broken apart. I didn't want my sister to see me break too much because I knew she was going to be kaput. So it was just, you know, one of those things that is trying to put on this strong hat for so long. And then finally you just like break and you figure out it's okay. Like it has to happen. And for me, it really wasn't that I was trying not to grieve. It just sometimes when you're putting on those different hats, it's just the one moment when you can kind of lay all those hats off or put them down for just a second, and it literally hits you, and you know move into that moment.
I forgot that thing. My mom during the time took over both of my dad's churches, and Ronnie, she kept preaching too. So they never stopped. Ministry never stopped. Work never stopped. And I was who was able to put my life, if you will, on hold. Because my dad always told us, look, when a Levite tribe, we get in here, we do what we do. So, you know, everything took a back seat, and I was going to the hospital, doing this, doing that. Now they were able to come in, you know, once they came off the road or whatever the case may be. But that's another thing, you know, he was like, you have to do this because ministry don't stop. Your brother has to do this because ministry doesn't stop. Your mom, your sister has to do this because ministry doesn't stop.
I mean, literally, there were a week he had revival, and my mom and I rotated every other night. It was like she took 2 nights, I took 2 nights. You know, she was this night, I was the next night, vice versa. Actually, the last like really conversation I had with my dad, where he was really alert. I had to preach that Friday, and I was like, they had called me and said, "Are you still coming? Your dad is sick." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm on my way." Said my dad, looked at me and was like, "Hey, you got an assignment. I will see you when you finish. Call me when you're done." So I went, I preached. I promise you, the power of God fell so heavy. It was like crazy. You couldn't even talk, right? From there, I called my dad. He was like, "How was it?" I tell him. He was like, "I'm so proud of you. Ministry has to continue. This is what we're assigned to do." We talked that night, and that Saturday, Sunday, he just wasn't at a space that he could talk anymore. And so that was one of like the last conversations we really had. And he just talked about, "I'm really proud of you for this. Y'all have really rallied." I mean, and so it was just like, this is just what we do. This is all we know.
Right.
Felt like we were carrying on his legacy because it's what he wanted us to do.
So at any time, Crystal and Rhonda, what would you say? Because y'all were raised to be strong, y'all were raised to rally and bond together during difficult times. Would you say at any time that you had mental health moments where you was like, well, can I really do this? Should I do this? Like, was it any question or any doubt to say, can I go forward in this? Or it was just like automatically, I just go? But Crystal, I know it's a little different because you said you had a minute to just put it on hold. So what was your mental health like versus Rhonda, who was still keep going like that?
So the crazy part is my mental health probably was the worst out of everybody's. for a couple different reasons. Number one, I was the definition of a daddy's girl, and I was spoiled. I
And this
was
happened in adult life. Because growing up, I was the daddy's girl and I was the favorite for years. And then it literally transitioned and whoo, I didn't know how bad adult spoil
all
was.
right. Okay, thank you. All right, because you're ready to say too much. I said I was spoiled. I was spoiled in my adult life.
Okay, yeah, I just needed us to add the adult life part. Because that
Okay,
makes okay.
okay. I was spoiled in my adult life. And I just felt like the wind was knocked out of me. It wasn't it. I could have, gone to tell my dad, "Hey, look, I think I'm gonna have a sex change next week." He wouldn't have been, giving me accolades and patting me on my back, but he accepted me just like I was. I could have said, "Dad, I slept with the whole football team last week." Whatever the case may be. So he was just that voice of reason. He was always logical. People think or thought because he was a pastor that, at all costs, he just beat the word in our heads, nonstop and all the time. That definitely wasn't the case. So for me, I tell anybody, I had to go to grief counseling. I tried not to go. I was like, you strong, you resilient, you did. Just go, somebody help me, please and thank you. Because I was just a mess. It wasn't that I didn't think I could live without him. It was just the reality of I have to live without him. And my mama, she said, "Listen, I'm not gonna do what your daddy did. So don't. I'm not." So ain't no more. Here, take the car to go fill your car up, or come in the house with my own bags and making groceries. Well, I can't do that sometimes, but all of those things, were cut off. The voice of reason for me, a lot of things were cut off and were different. So I went to counseling, and I'll tell anybody, it really helped me. It helped me to process my feelings, and even in that, I still prayed, that of course that's what I know. I said, God, you just got to be patient with me because I'm just a mess right now. And I was just transparent and honest. I said, I'm angry, but I'm a mess. I know I'm a sinner. I know all that stuff that, the religious rhetoric. I know all that. I know I'm gonna see him again. I know he got a glorified body. I know he healed, but nothing of that changes the fact that I want him here physically. No legs, cut off fingers, and all. Bring my daddy back.
Right.
And they even said, well, we could cut his arms off up to his elbows. And so that means he will have no legs, no hands. If y'all still want to try to keep him here, they will put a hole in his chest. They said we'll have to run dialysis 24 hours a day. I'm like, there's no way that I can be that selfish and ask him, what state of life is he gonna have? So you get to the point where even though I'm grieving, I'm like, let's just be real about this thing.
Right.
But for the longest, my faith was on 1,000. I was like, God, I know you're gonna heal him. Like, I believe you're gonna heal him. I'm like praying, fasting, like, I know
Yes,
you're
Lord.
gonna do this because you're God.
My.
Yeah.
And so when he did, I'm like, I know you still cry, but I really feel some kind of way because brother so-and-so over here who doing ABC and XYZ don't even not your name or know your name. He living his best life. And my dad is out here. We didn't throw him down in his grave and do this dirt over him. I feel some kind of way.
Right.
I
So
think the difference for me is I just kept running. In my mind, I didn't have a choice. So it was like rolling, running. And I realized I think a lot like my dad. So in processing his death, it was very different for me because I felt like now grief was still there, but I felt like, you know what, this is the path that he was supposed to take. And I honestly found myself being very proud of the way he did it. Like, I mean, he until the death of him, he was always encouraging. He was always prayerful. He was always praising. And like my sister said, my dad had been sick for some years, and so like every time he would go into a surgery, he would leave out and he would say, "If I don't see you back on this side, I'll see you on the other side." And I remember he had a kidney transplant, and his body started rejecting the kidney. He was really sick and had to take it out. And so I walked him back to as far as they would let me go. And I normally don't do that. And he looked at me and he said, He said to us, if I don't make it out on this side, I'll see you on the other side. And the nurse looked at us and said, how do y'all do that? Like, how do y'all talk like that and you don't break? And I said, it's just we believe it's what we do. For whatever reason, that day, I walked him as far back as they would let me. And he looked at me and he said, Daddy is really sick this time. And I just said, okay, because I'm trying to be hard. I turn around, he's gone, he don't see me, but I immediately start crying. Because that was the only time ever, and that wasn't even when he had his legs amputated. He still had his legs at that moment. That was the only time he had said to me, no, I'm really sick this time, as in like, no, I really need God to do this because I feel sick. Even after his legs were amputated, his faith was always so strong. It was just contagious. And so our process was very different. I probably should have went to counseling, but I didn't. You know, because I didn't feel like I needed to at the time. I think things came later, like I started grad school, and I just couldn't focus. And so my first couple classes, I failed them. Like I literally had to do an appeal to get reinstated in school. And I remember one day sitting in my office and I was crying. I was like, God, I don't understand. This is too much. It's so much to process. And while I was crying, it was actually raining outside. And like in the middle of my prayer, the rain stopped and the sun came out and I just burst into laughter. And I said, wow. And I was like, I don't know why in that moment I felt like my dad was there saying, I know this is rough, but you got to dry them tears and you got to roll up your sleeves and roll with it. Because what had happened is when I did my appeal, they denied it. And they denied it because I had to send them not just the death certificate, but the obituary proving that he was actually my dad. And so I'm talking to the lady like, who in the world would lie and say their dad is dead for an appeal? She was like, ma'am, and I'm crying talking to her. She said, I'm so sorry. I'm not trying to be insensitive, but people do it. So you gotta do something to show us this is you. You know, so I had my little spiel, I cried, you know, God shows up. I feel like, you know, that's also him telling me, hey, little girl, get your life together. You know, we maneuver through. But I mean, even like when I think about like weddings, that like, I'm like, oh, who's gonna walk me down the aisle? Now I know who's gonna walk me down the aisle, but still, I would have much rather roll down the aisle with my daddy than anybody else walk me. But I mean, you know, it's just been one of those things that we push through.
Okay. All right. So Stephen, I think your story is a little different, but I have yet to hear. I know my internet keeps blinking in and out, but I need y'all just stay with me. It's gonna come back in. So Stephen, please share your story with us.
So my story, can y'all hear me first of all?
Yes.
Mhm.
So my story is very I don't say it's complex, but it's very different. So a lot of people know that I have a twin sister. I think she's on tonight watching as well. So hi Shelby if you're on. But October 26th of 2012 is always going to be super duper hard for the both of us. That weekend in itself. Keep in mind, I said that weekend, right? So I lost my job in September of 26th of 2013. Excuse me, 2012. I'm sorry. And so at this point, I'm not working. And my dad had been sick all my life. My dad was a heart patient from birth. My dad was on dialysis for the latter part of his life. And he also had diabetes, but the diabetes had somehow faded away because he was on dialysis. So they managed to kind of get him off out of something and he was on something else, right? So excuse me. So I remember the week of his passing, my mom was at work and I had just gotten home. I was out all day applying for jobs. Wherever anybody saw me, I was at the library. I think I lived at the library that week applying for jobs. And so I got home and I was like, you know, Daddy, you know, you okay? And he was like, I'm okay. And that wasn't my father's response. Anybody that knows my dad knows that my daddy was going to give you some kind of vibrant, elaborate response because my daddy was a jokester. I'm my daddy's child. Like, I literally am my daddy's child. Mm-hmm. So he was like, I'm okay. Mind you, I'm not looking at him. So I go in his room and he's laying there, and he's literally drenched in sweat, like just laying there. And I'm like, what's wrong with him? So I call my mom, and she's on her way home from work, and I was like, Mom, Daddy doesn't look good. And I don't know what it was, but something in me was like, okay, this is it. This is it. Like, I was like, Mom, he doesn't look good. She was like, well, just get him ready. And so I got him out of the bed. I pulled him up with, I don't know how I got some strength from anywhere. I just pulled him up, and I put his clothes on. And I remember my mom blowing the horn. And I remember going out of the door with him on my shoulder. Like, he was literally wrapped around my shoulder. And I was like, Daddy, I love you, right? And he was like, yes, son, I love you too. And he was like, I don't feel good. And I said, I know you don't feel good, but I love you. And I'm saying this, and tears just started flowing out of my face, like out of my eyes, just everywhere. Just I'm crying, and I'm not really an emotional person, but that broke me. And so he gets in the car, and my mom takes him to the hospital. So my mom comes back probably about 11:30 that night. She's like, he's really sick. Like, when they drew blood off of him, his blood looked black. He's really sick. And mind you, dialysis was working. He wasn't, dying from anything else. It was he had gotten some sort of infection somewhere. So my mom was like, he looked really bad. Like, I don't know if he's gonna come home right now. And I'm like, okay. So my mother is also scheduled to have a mastectomy for breast cancer the following Friday. Okay. So Friday, October 25th, she's supposed to go into surgery that morning. So we get to Friday. My dad's still in the hospital. He's, alert. He's talking. He's like, hey, y'all, y'all all right? He called me before my mom's surgery. He's like, she okay? And I'm like, yeah, let me talk. He's like, let me talk to her. So he talks to her. He says, I love you. And I mean, just had a whole blown long conversation, regular day conversation. And so the day goes on, and my mom comes out of surgery. She's good. They tell me that I can go home. So I go home. I get some food. I, rest. And the next morning, I have to be back to pick up my mom at like 7 o'clock. So I get up and go pick her up. We get her medicines. I get her home. She's situated. She's fine. Cancer's gone. So we straight, right?
Right.
My sister's blowing my phone up. Anybody that knows me knows I'm a hard sleeper. I sleep extremely hard. I turn this phone ringer down, and I will put it to the side, and I'm going to town. You hear me? So I went to sleep. And my sister was calling my phone, and she never really said why. I never left voicemails, just was calling my phone. And I can remember my mom yelling, Stephen, get up. So she scares me out of my sleep. And she's like, your daddy coded. Coded? Like, what do you mean? So she's like, he coded in the hospital. Go out there with your sister. My mom can't go. She's bandaged up really tight. She can't go anywhere. So I get to the hospital. By the time I get to my dad's room, he's in ICU. By the time I get to his room,
it's hard now.
By the time I get to ICU, they literally are putting tubes down his throat. I can't see past the chaplain who's in my face, like, hey, you're Mr. Colonel's son. You're the one he says can sing, right? And I'm like, yes, could you move out of the way? Thank you. I appreciate it. So I could not see past him. His older sister was there, my aunt. Love her to pieces. His aunt, my aunt Elizabeth, she was there, and she's like, it's gonna be okay. Like, just don't look at it. And I'm looking at her like, what do you mean don't look at it? Like, what's happening? Like, I don't know. Till this day, I didn't know what was happening. But they took us to the waiting room, and the doctor was telling us that he basically became septic. So none of his sicknesses was killing him. It was a septic issue. Mm-hmm. So they're like, we're gonna try everything we can to get the infection out and all this stuff. So by 10 o'clock that night, all this family is coming in. My aunts, cousins, church members, literally everybody's coming into the waiting room. And I'm like, why are y'all here? Like, what are they not telling me? Why are y'all here? My mother's still home. I'm updating her. I'm keeping her in the loop. And so the doctor comes in about 9:45, and they're like, where's Mr. Colonel's son? And I'm like, right here. She was like, well, did you want to go back and see him? And I'm like, yeah, I'll go back and see my dad. So it's me and him in the room, and I'm rubbing his head, and I'm talking to him, and I can tell that he can see what I'm saying because his forehead is moving, and his eyes are like clenching and stuff. And I made him laugh because I remember his eyes like doing this funny thing that he used to do. And so I started singing, And at that point, I broke. Because I was like, what if he really doesn't come home? I'm now the man of the house. What does that look like for a 24-year-old going on 25 the next month, couple of weeks? What does that look like? So I go back out to the waiting area. My sister's gone to get her something to eat in the cafeteria. The doctor comes back in immediately after I leave out of the room and was like, hey, he's coded again. What do you want us to do? I want y'all to bring my daddy back. That's what I want y'all to do. Like, don't ask me that. I want y'all to, fix it. Like, get it right. Mm-hmm. And so I call my mom and I'm like, Ma, he's coded again. Like, what do we do? She was like, well, baby, I don't know. And the doctor's like, well, we're doing more damage than good by banging on his chest and all of this stuff. And I'm like, well, y'all just do something, fix it. And by the time I said fix it for the last time, the nurse comes back in where the doctor was and says, he's gone. My daddy is gone. So immediately I burst into tears. My sister's not back yet, and I have to tell her that he's gone. Daddy's little girl, the baby of all the siblings, his ride or die, like literally they get in trouble together. Like those two get in trouble together. I have to tell her that
Jesus.
Right. So I go back out. I'm like, where's my sister? Where's my sister? I have to bury my daddy. Where's my sister? So I go out the waiting area and she's getting off the elevator and she looks at me and she says no. And she falls out on the floor. I'm like, okay, so this is the new normal now. So I sign all paperwork. We go back home. I drop off some water that I just picked up from the store. And I remember going back outside and getting in my car and I drive to Whippoorwill Park over by the stadium and I sit there. I scream and I cry to the top of my lungs because I don't know what to do. A Black man without his father who has been in his life his entire life. His parents are married, not a single family home. You know, what do you do? What does life look like for you without your father? And I still couldn't figure it out. I'm 33 years old and still can't figure it out now. You know, I processed everything. My friends were like, how are you so strong? I don't know. One of my friends came to the house and was like, no, you're not strong. Brandy Daniel, you're not strong. I was like, yes, I am. No, you're not. She pulled me outside. It was 12 o'clock at night, cold, rainy, and I'm standing in the rain, boo-hoo crying. I'm literally on the ground, just crying my eyes out because I finally broke. Less than 24 hours before his service. And that was it for me. Like, I'm still trying to navigate life without my biggest cheerleader, biggest supporter. I'm releasing music tomorrow. He's not here. I've been in ministry for almost 6 years now. I'm getting elevated this year. He's missed both of those. How do I navigate that at this point? You know what I mean? So it's been tough. Like, it's not something that that gets easier. You get used to it, but it's not something that gets easier. And you just have to learn how to manage it. And that's just what I've been doing, managing it for all this long time. And yeah, my sister could probably tell you a different story, but you know, for me, I just been the one to try to like smile, and, keep it 100 at the funeral and all that stuff. I did everything. I tucked him in the casket and closed it down. I did all of that without crying, but I still had my moment, after the fact. So it's just hard. It's very hard to try to manage and maneuver through that. Even at this point, with all the new things that have happened in my life, my mama's here. She supports everything, but it's nothing like having your dad support. So that's just that was my take on it.
I do have a couple questions. I'm gonna save them to the end. So, Dion, you can go ahead and share your story, sweetie.
So I am like Miss Crystal and Miss Rhonda. I was the quintessential definition of a daddy's girl. If they had daddy's girl in the dictionary, my picture would be there. Um, it was really bad. Not so much because I was spoiled, but we just had a really good relationship. So for me, I have to go back a couple of years, a year or two before he passed. There was an incident that happened, and I won't go into detail because it's pretty bad and it's traumatic. But I found him there where he was, and it was a whole ambulance situation, and whatever. And fast forward 2017 in November, I lost my oldest brother. The hardest thing that anyone could ever do is have to tell a parent that a sibling died and they're in the hospital as well. That was pretty bad. 3 weeks later, my dad passed. So there's just a lot going on. Mind you, my son was 1. And I myself, was dealing with postpartum depression. So I had a lot going on. Started a new job. I was working way in North Raleigh. And I won't get into the details of hospital stays and stuff like that to belabor the time. But I didn't cry. I cried the night that I found out. My family was gracious enough not to tell me until I got into Durham from Raleigh. I drove to the house. I saw all the cars, all of my siblings that are still here with me, and my family, my cousins. I kind of knew when I pulled up in the yard what was wrong. I knew. I didn't want to accept it. I didn't want to acknowledge it. Because I'm like Crystal, I prayed. To watch a lot of things that went on. I didn't initially know what grief was until after a few years. After that second year, then I was like, oh, this is the real. I'm like Rhonda, Miss Crystal. It did hit initially, but it didn't really hit until like several months later for me. I can't say that I cry a lot. I just feel intense sadness. One of the things that I did is I continue to go to therapy. Amen. Amen. Because for me, I believe in Jesus, I believe in his son, I believe in the precious Holy Spirit, and I believe in therapy. Amen.
Absolutely.
Because for me,
Dion, take a second. Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
For a minute,
Go ahead.
somebody was saying they couldn't hear you, so I was going to take a minute to see if everybody could hear everybody, but they say everything is fine now. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So no problem. So and I'm like Miss Rhonda, I had to do praise and worship, and I had to keep preaching, and I had to keep serving. I think for me, one of the things that the Lord told me, because I kept saying, well, God, this doesn't make sense. It does nothing. This is not making sense to me. And he told me, he said, well, I gave you borrowed time. He said, when you saw your dad, that in that incident, I'm not going to go into it because it was very traumatic, and that I don't want to relive it. He said, I gave you borrowed time. That was supposed to be it. Nobody's there with me. There was nobody to help me. Of course, the paramedics came and things like that. But, he told me I gave you borrowed time. And he said, now, and my mom says this to this day, and I thank God for her. She said, I'm going to honor the prayer of the person who is sick. You can pray from here to Mexico. You can pray from here to wherever. You can bubble shinda, cover your face up, tear your hair out, take your wig off, I don't care what you do, sackcloth and ashes, go back to biblical days. I don't care what you do. If that person is ready and has made resolve in their spirit that they're ready to be with the Lord, it's nothing you can do. And that is truly the case with my dad. Now, I can say now that, that time has passed, I really know what faith is. Faith in the Holy Spirit is the only reason why I have a mind, why I can get up and get out of the bed in the morning, why I can dress. I mean, really, I can't, I'm sorry, I'm really churchy, like you said, because it was days where I didn't have the wherewithal to do anything. It was really the Holy Spirit, to get up, pick up a mic and to sing and to look in a corner and to know that your dad's not there. He played the Congos, and, he did men's Sunday school, and he was very visible, and he was my pastor as well. And so to get up there and look to the corner and see his drums where he's not sitting it was the biggest slap in the face that I could ever have. Then I got this 1-year-old son. I got a new job. My brother just died. It was a mess. It was a mess. And people don't realize, even, and I'm going to go this route, when you are married and you have a kid, I plummeted. Like I had to crawl up out of that. You're already dealing with postpartum issues. You got, all this stuff going on, and you're just trying to be normal enough to take care of the son that God just gave you. Yeah. It's so much deeper. Grief is so much deeper than what happens to you. It's a ripple effect. It's what happens to your family. It's what happened to your spouse who's trying to figure out how to take care of you, and you just a basket case. Girl, I was crazy. Okay. I'm still a little bit. God is good. We thank God for Jesus. But I was crazy. No, for real. Like, not like want to jump off a bridge. I'm not like that. Don't call me people. But I was nuts, because I'm in my mind, I'm thinking, God, okay, now you took this man who served you, who's been everything that you've called him to be since he's been saved. Everything you wanted him to be, whatever you called him to do, he did. And now you done took him, and I'm sitting here looking crazy. And it wasn't about him fixing things for me. It wasn't about him, doing things for me. It was the wisdom that I missed. I miss his voice. I miss his voice. Like, I miss the hugs. I miss the lunches, the conversation, I could care less about him buying me tires. I miss him.
Right.
And then my mom, is a pastor in her own right. She's a bishop, in the Lord's church, who is pastoring in a pandemic by herself. God is good. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so whereas, I have I have family that supports her, and my brother and myself, everybody who is attached is helping. You got to realize it's more than just me that it affected. It affected our whole entire universe, and everybody gets stuck at, oh, well, God, God this and God. And let me tell you, he is the only reason why I'm here. But people have to understand that there is a natural component to grief. You have to couple what you know with the spirit, what you need in the natural. Everybody doesn't need therapy. Some people can cope and get through, but everybody is not like that. And some people have to understand, first and foremost, am I able to deal with what I'm dealing with today? I can't worry about tomorrow. I need to worry about today. Tomorrow's going to take care of itself. Today, I need a little assistance. I need a little help. And there's nothing wrong with acknowledging when you're at a grieving point where it's gone a little to the left, because you need to come on back. You got to come on back, especially when you got children you got to raise, you got jobs you got to work. The enemy will use grief to literally lock you into a depression where you can't see Tuesday from Wednesday. Like, what day is it? Like, what is happening, friends?
Right.
And so I know for me in the grieving process, I have friends whose dads have passed. I am not the only one. And it is a mess. I mean, you're realizing that we raising people grandchildren, and the granddaddies ain't here. Who gonna teach them how to fish? I'm not teaching you how to change no tile. We're gonna look at YouTube. I mean, you got to think about it. You got to think about it. And what I've realized is not so much what I have lost, but the influence is what I have to hold on to. I got to hold on to the influence that he gave me. Whatever deposits that he put in me, I have to draw on those. So I'll never forget him. I will never forget the impact that he made in my life. And every time I get a chance, I tell somebody, well, my dad used to say that. Or, my favorite thing that I remember about my dad was that we were going on. I used to. My church had summer camp that year, and I was like 17, and the bus broke down, and my dad said, "Okay, well, we're gonna go on this field trip." I said, "Well, Dad, the bus is broke down. What did you?" He takes some pantyhose and fixes the bus with pantyhose. That I tell everybody that story. I don't even care if they know me or know my daddy. Guess what? I'm gonna tell you about my daddy. Because I want to keep those memories alive. I want people to know how much he meant to me. I don't want to I don't want to, harbor the memories of his death or harbor the memories of his sickness or his illness. Because at that point, I mean, there's nothing you can physically do. Just like Crystal said, you're hopeless. Not hopeless, but helpless, rather. Not hopeless, but helpless. You can't do anything. And so, for me, I'm learning to be okay. I'm 35, thank God, but this is the first year I felt normal. And my dad passed in 2017.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it takes, and I'm not lying to the people. I mean, I want okay. And anybody who do
it takes time.
It takes time.
And I'm not where I want to be, but I'm not where I was. So,
yeah.
So with that being said, I'm gonna ask a couple of questions and then we're gonna round out here because I have truly enjoyed. It's funny because last year when I was doing this, I guess I was still in my mode. I still got work to do. I'm like Rhonda, I got work to do, so my mind is not there yet. I wasn't really grieving because I was still in work mode. Now this time y'all are telling y'all stories. I'm sitting here, look, I just want to go to a corner and I just want to cry. I just want to have a moment because I'm able to breathe. I'm able to breathe because I've spent the past year and a half trying to tie up loose ends, and I've done it on my own. I'm so used to my sister taking care of everything, and she like just go eat and get a popsicle or something. She literally treated me like a baby, and so now like I was like, oh my God, I'm grieving. I hear y'all stories. I hear things that y'all went through, how you handled Crystal versus Rhonda, because I see me and Crystal, and then I see me and Rhonda, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, and then when Steven talked about how he just broke down, I had flashes of when I broke down, and I was like, oh my God, this is crazy, but like you said, everybody can find a little bit of a piece of their story in somebody else's story, but everybody's story is totally different in how they experienced it. But what I want to know is, was the support there? Was the support there? Did you have a support system, whether it be, I know Crystal and Rhonda said about their family, they rallied together, but was there friends that can truly say, yeah, I was there for you? Or did you see, did it shift? And some people were just like, okay, you having a moment. I'll come back and deal with you later when you're not having a moment. Like, what did your support system look like during that time? And anybody, Crystal, Steven, you can go first. Crystal, whoever.
Yes, Steven.
So for me, I had support out the wazoo. My mom had support out the wazoo. My mom has it's 10 of my mom. So my mom is number 10, but it was 9 siblings, so 5 boys, 5 girls. So she had the support of her siblings. And at the time my grandmother was still alive. So my mama had family and her co-workers rallied around her because again, she's still healing from this cancer as well, the mastectomy. So she had support out the wazoo. We had food for days. Like my dad's family came and they cooked and all that stuff, and they were supportive. They called and checked on us every day. They still sometimes call and check and make sure we're good. My friends supported. They showed up in droves. My sister's friends showed up in droves. To this day, Demetra Chestnut and Josephus Lewis, they were actually at the service. My friend Brandy Daniel, she was at the service, and they all were there making sure that I was good. My sister's friends were there as well. So they still ask me if I'm okay in regards to that, because they knew that it was a huge blow to our family. So I always experienced support. Whether I took it or not was the question, but I had the support system that I needed during that season. So I say it was real for me.
I'll say a couple of things. This is one thing that I realized, and I think it's just in general with death. I realized that people don't know what to say. Oftentimes, so they say what they think sounds good, or because I'll never forget. I was walking out of my dad's funeral, And a deacon of a church said, stop crying, stop crying, stop crying. He didn't have it. He stopped crying. And I looked to the president beside me and he told me to stop crying one more time. And I'm going to launch over here in about 3.2 seconds. Don't tell me to stop crying. Don't tell me. I know this. I know all this. So don't the obvious. I know that. So that's one thing I really realized. And I hate people just don't know what to say. And sometimes, you don't think it's insensitive, but at the moment it really is. That's one thing I realized. But as far as support, my family and friends did a phenomenal job. Phone calls, text messages. We ain't had cash up at the time, but slinging a few dollars here. You need gas, you need this. I cook, come by and get a plate. My coworkers, just everybody was supportive, especially my aunts on my mama's side. We call them the gospel gang. My aunts would come in, the gospel gang, y'all. They come in from work. They got bags, changing clothes, come in, cleaning up, doing this, doing that, doing this, doing that. Just doing, all kinds of stuff. So the churches were supportive. Because the reality is, after a certain time, after a week, 2 weeks, the phone start ringing, the text messages get a little slower. It's like, well, we know, but so on his death date, I get a lot of love and support, or I'm quick to be like, y'all, I'm having a moment, so y'all probably gonna see me cry today, so just let me cry. Or it could be, I can smell his favorite kind of cologne and I start crying. But one of the things I always remember, this is going off the topic with support, but with the Lion King, we always talk about we tell us like, remember who you are. So oftentimes I always talk about Lynn's living legacy, and that is one of the things that I just hold near and dear to, and keep that in the forefront of my mind when I'm sad, when I'm happy. Like Ronnie said, sometimes stuff will be happening, I'm having a moment, and like something could fall down, or I could see a commercial or think about something that we did, and I'm like, okay, Daddy, like I hear you. Things like that. So support was definitely there, and people do what they feel or what they know is right. But to anybody out there who's dealing with grief, don't try to put a time limit on it. Don't try to put a feeling on it. Some days you want to go to the gym ring. Some days you want to eat a tub of ice cream. Some days you want to say, "Whoa, it's big God, why me?" Because I'm like Dion, my faith was on 1,000. I was like, "Ooh, greater works." Like God gonna use me. I'm gonna lay hands on my dad and he gonna recover. Like I just had the faith. So when boy
Listen.
didn't recover, I said, "Wait a minute, God, wait, okay, let me get your word. Wait a minute, something ain't right." I was feeling in my feelings, but the support system, has been phenomenal, and they continue to be. They check in on us, or always making comments. People say, "Man, I wish I would have met your dad," because just hearing you all talk about him, makes me really wish I would have been able to meet him. So those are things I hold on to when I have my moments and get sad.
I wanted to comment on something you said too. One of the first things I did when my dad passes, I got off social media. Because people are very insensitive. The first thing they ask is what happened, where he at, what, and I love my black, brown, purple, green, all the colors of the rainbow. I love all my friends, all my family, but sometimes people are not sensitive enough to understand the sensitivity of the matter. And instead of me asking what's wrong or asking what can I do to help, all I need you to do is say, I acknowledge that this is happening to you. Let me know what you need from me.
Right.
I think, support comes, I had friends that called me and they didn't say anything, but they wanted me to know that they are acknowledging that I was upset. I mean, me and my dad were very close. Right. And, like everybody has said, sometimes you have to do things that are not orthodox or what people consider to be orthodox during a time of grief, because grief to you may look different to me. I don't need nobody texting me. I don't need nobody calling me. I don't need nobody messaging me. I dismantled all of my social media for a short period of time until I was ready to be introduced back into a realm where I was okay and comfortable with communicating with people. Because sometimes, when there's a lot going on, people don't understand that you're not in a space to communicate with them. I don't want to talk to you. And I'm not saying that to be funny. Yeah. Your friends know the sensitivity of the matter, but sometimes people are trying to text you and call you, and you're really trying to muster up enough within yourself to move forward with services, with whatever your portion of the, of the program is, or even if you have to be, like Miss Sherry said, the person who is making the plans, and for me, anybody who's watching that's dealing with grief or maybe going through with a parent that is sick, understand that you have to back away from things that cause you stress or anxiety. People have to realize there are different levels of stress and anxiety that people feel. When someone is sick, that is not the time to be trying to be taking care of them. I can't take care of you and myself. And the first thing they tell you on a plane, if the plane loses air pressure, put your mask on first. Or the people say mask, M-A-S-S, put your mask on first. I can't help you if I'm somewhere looking crazy. Amen. It's the truth. I can't help you. I can't help you right now. So don't text me. Don't call me. I'll communicate at a time. And that's not being mean. That's being sensitive to the fact that you're taking care of yourself. You got to take care of yourself and your needs so that you can continue to be the mother, the wife, the sister, the cousin because you could be done fell down in the hole and somebody been done at the hospital with you because you hyperventilating and acting crazy, and support wise, my church out the gate. I mean, I can't say, people who used to go to our church 20 something years ago came to support. I mean, it was nothing short of a miracle just to see so many people that his life touched. Man, that thing blew my mind.
Yeah, I agree. It's just, for me, support was, don't get me wrong, I will forever be indebted to my friends and my family. I remember the day before my dad's funeral, it snowed, and it was like a good snow. We were right at the end of January. And I remember looking outside and seeing the snow, and never once did I ever worry that my friends weren't going to be there. Like, I knew if my friends had to get on pure snowboards from Durham, they were going to be at the funeral. I mean, it never crossed my mind, like, man, what if they can't come? Never thought about it because I just knew they would be there.
It snowed the day my dad died too.
I was probably hard to check on because I was much like you. So I'm very much like, when I'm grieving or dealing with certain stuff, I don't want to talk. Like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to text. I don't want to have a conversation. I kind of just want to be left alone. And I am guilty of treating people in that sense the way I want people to treat me. Right. So I don't do a whole calling, texting, because in my mind, we ride or die. If you need me, pick up the phone and call me, and I'm running. Right? I mean, it's still something I'm working on. I even realized through the process of grieving, I was doing that to my sister. Like, there was some areas she was struggling in, and she and I had this conversation. I was like, don't get me wrong, I get it. But I remember saying to her one day, I don't understand how this took you by such a surprise. I literally couldn't get it. And she was looking at me.
When your faith is here, yes. When your faith is up here, you just,
her saying to me, yeah, it was like, I mean, we're two different people. I mean, that's just not what I thought. For me, it wasn't that my faith wasn't there. My dad, my sister can tell you, always say to us, I'm going to die first out of me and your mom, and I'm going to die young. I mean, like, I'm talking about we were little, just with no health issues. He had always been diabetic, but I mean, he'd been manageable. He always said that. And so it was like all those things were coming back. And I was like, man, he was like, that's why I traveled the world. I made sure I made the best of my life because I knew earthly, I'm not going to have this long life. I'm not going to be 75, 80 years old. We heard that, but I heard him, but I'm like, okay, he 40 talking like, whatever. Little did I know it was going to be what, 56?
Wow.
56, 57, 57.
My faith was still on 1,000.
There was no other option for me. Like, I wasn't even thinking nothing. I'm thinking, okay, I'm thinking about Hezekiah. Let me go get some figs. I'm just like, what? You laughing? I'm serious. I was literal. The Bible said the figs. I was finna go find a lump. where do I need to go? I was serious.
Yeah.
I didn't have there were no other options for me. None.
So I guess I was different in that because faith never entered my mind.
Mhm.
I just knew that I had to, because my dad, like I said, my dad was sick all my life. So anytime he would go in for a surgery, I knew that man was coming out talking junk. You know what I mean? I knew he was coming out cracking jokes. So I never, give him 1 or 2 days in the hospital. He gonna be home, by the third day. You know what I mean? So faith never was a thing for me. Like I never really put that into action at that point. I just knew that I had to process the biggest loss of my life in that season. And I didn't know how.
But it's something different when you got 2 in 3 weeks. That right there, honey.
Now that would have been different for me.
That would
I
have been
can tell
different.
you now,
Whoa.
had I lost a sibling
Good God Almighty. Good God Almighty.
and my dad,
It's a different
that
type of
would
grief.
have been
A sibling is different than a parent. But having to tell a parent that is sick that your brother just died, that sent me that way, and that was not good. I mean, of course, I wasn't the only one there. My aunt was there, my cousin was there, there were other people there, but that was the worst thing that I could have ever had to do. It was bad. It was very, very bad. And what I would tell somebody who is grieving a sibling, you have to. Well, I'm not going to say have to. One of the things that I, am learning to do is to continue to keep the memories that I have that were positive alive. I try not to dwell on the times that I was arguing and fussing and throwing stuff, and that was me. God is you doing the work. But I would say to people who are dealing with sibling grief, it's different because especially if you have multiple siblings like I do. He, to me, I call him the MVP. Like nobody stayed mad at him long. Like we could be mad at everybody else for a long period of time, but we won't be mad at him for a very long time. So I just try to, comfort myself with the fact that I know that he loves me. And the last conversation that I had with him was one of the best conversations that I had. And that comforts me. And dwell on what you remember to be those good times as opposed to those negative times. Hospital stays and sicknesses and things like that. It really continues to put you in a downward spiral. So I just always, with the sibling thing, that's a whole nother, just try to think of the positive things. So
and memories are important.
Go ahead.
I mean, they are big. Like, and there's not a day that goes by. Let's talk about this too real quick. You're going to think about them every day.
Every day.
My father has been dead for 8 years. There's not a day that I don't think about him. And there's probably not many days that I go without talking about him. Like legitimately. We'll laugh. And I think it was just earlier today or yesterday, I said something to my sister. I was like, remember when daddy said such and such? Like, we just do it all the time. I think that's the other thing. Like, you gotta, if you have isms, schisms, whatever, settle it. Live in the moment and make memories. And the best memories we have aren't when they bought us these high price things. It's just like family moments where we just laughed, joked, we cut up. Just those moments. You gotta remember those, relive those, rehash those, talk about those. All that is important. Because it keeps the memory alive, and it just reminds you of all the greatness that person brought into your life. That's major.
Yeah, piggybacking off of Ronnie, but I could go on and on about like the top 5 things that, I mean, to this day I could start talking about it. We'll both just burst into laughter as if it happened yesterday. Make memories, focus on the good, and if something is wrong, because I'm talking to a person now who have an issue with one of their parents, listen, life is too short. Like, go fix it. It might not be perfect. You can't change the past, but you can pick up from where you are today, and you can move forward and make the best out of what the time that you have left. Don't dwell on what he or she didn't do, coulda, shoulda, woulda, crackhead, abusive, whatever. If your parent is trying to be in your life and reconcile, please meet them halfway. And I'm not saying it's not gonna be easy. You might have to have a therapist. Go see Gene Hoskins at Peace of Mind. You might need, Y'all know I love my people. So, go get you some peace of mind with Gene, or have you a mediator and work that thing out. That's one thing. The second thing I want to say is, everybody always try to be strong all the time. When I'm with my family, I don't try to be strong because I don't have to be. But when I'm around other people, they really think I'm strong. I'm really not. But
She's
you gotta
definitely
know
the baby.
I'm not. You have moments where you don't have to always try to be strong. Like, you need to break. It's healthy to break. My therapist told me you need a good cry every 90 days. So go ahead and take that time and cry. And if you ain't grieved, stop and do it.
And see,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, I
Go
was gonna say for me, I couldn't cry. I mean, it was such an intense sadness, and I don't know, I might be a different kind of little, whatever. I could not cry. There were days I literally wanted to cry, and it just would not, like, I couldn't cry. And so, like you were saying, I release it in different ways, whether it's a song, whether it's in worship, whatever it is, I've learned to release it in different ways. I wish that I could dance. I can't. I mean, I can dance and, shout, but I can't dance. But, and like you were saying, release it every 90 days, however it is, whether you write it out or whether, whatever it is, releasing it out. And I agree with you. Everybody thinks I'm strong, which I am strong in the Lord and in the power of his might, but Dion, the person, is not. So I agree with you on that. I
And
really
get you
do.
some people that you can be vulnerable with. If your coworkers think you strong, okay, don't go to them. Go to somebody else who, look, I need a moment. I need to be crisp. I need to get an ugly cry on. Get the Kleenex, and you bring 2 pints of ice cream and 2 spoons because I need a moment. You have to have people that you can be there with, and it's gonna be okay. They're gonna be like, girl. Like, one time, I looked in the mirror. I was crying. I looked in the mirror. You remember this thing? I looked in the mirror. Y'all, that face I was making, I said, "Oh no, you need to clean it up because that
It was
right there,
hilarious because it
just
was
bust,
such an ugly cry.
uh, such an ugly cry that you bust out laughing and say, clean it up.
Yeah.
Simple things, So just do what you do, feel what you feel, but hold on to the good. Like, in this case, I'm like, focus on the good, please. Focus on the good. That's my 2 cents.
Yes.
Or 22 cents.
Stephen, what's your 2 cents before we close out of here?
I mean, just do it. Honestly, just find you some time to really sit down and, like Dion said, if you have to write it out, write what you're feeling out. If you have to talk to yourself, talk it out. Like, just get it out. You know what I mean? That's one thing, because anybody that knows me knows I'm only going to cry in worship. Sherry, you know that I'm only going to cry in worship. Mm-hmm. I don't like to cry just to be crying, because when I start, I can't stop. Like, I literally, if I start, I'm gonna cry for about a good hour, 2-3 hours. Like, I'm gonna just every time I think about something, I'm just be like, oh my God, I just like, it's gonna be that kind of thing. And so I don't cry. But I think when my father passed, everything just kind of triggered. So anytime I saw something that he liked, I was like, oh my God, my daddy gone, like that kind of thing, So if you have to just do it, just do it. Like, I mean, there's no way of getting away from it. There's no way of getting around it. You literally have to go through it. You just have to go through it. So, I mean, I'm grateful for every tear that I cried, but I'm also grateful for every laugh that I had. In talking about old times and, just thinking about old things. And, so I'm just grateful that I was able to go through it and get through it. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah. It was so many other things I wanted to discuss, but the time has passed us, and it don't take long for me to shut down in a minute these days. The older I get, the quicker I shut down. But tonight, y'all have truly blessed my heart, and I pray that you have touched others. Did you learn something tonight?
Yes.
Oh my God. You are your daddy's child. God,
She's
no.
her daddy's child. Oh my God.
God, that was TJ.
Right. She all day long.
Yes.
But I do want to say this. Y'all have stated some very key points tonight. And I pray that someone heard it and that they take what they've heard tonight and apply it to their process, their grieving process. But one thing I can say, and I am kind of gonna go spiritual there, because at the end of the day, Thursday Love falls under RTP, which is at the end of the day, God is our God, He's our Lord and our Savior, and I'm never going to be ashamed to talk about Him. But there's a shift that does take place, whether we recognize it or not. There was a shift that took place in Steve, and a shift that take place in Rhonda, Crystal, and Dion, and myself, and all those who are ever affected by losing a loved one. There's a shift that takes place that we may not recognize it at that moment, but it happens. It's a different level of maturity that happens, not only naturally, but spiritually. And it's a transition that is very hard because we're coming out of an old place and walking into a new place. And it's not the most easiest place to walk in because it's the most painful place that we're walking out of or trying to walk through. And so I am, tonight, my heart was blessed because a shift has taken place. I can tell the shift has taken place in you all's lives as well as myself. And it's not something that we ask for. It's not something, it is something that they try to prepare us for. It's something they tell us about all the time. Death is inevitable. It's going to happen. But no matter how much you try to mentally tell yourself or prepare yourself, it's just something that will knock you off because of how it happens, when it happens. And if you have a support system, I love the fact that y'all had a support system the way you did. I can honestly say I didn't. So my support system was my husband and my children. And my best friend. So I didn't have all of those people. Don't get me wrong. There were some people that came, but like to truly have that support system like that. No, the one I was looking for. No, I didn't. It was devastating for me to walk through. So I agree with you all. Grief is something you embrace. It's not something you can deny or neglect or reject. You literally have to embrace it. So when it comes, because it will come in waves, and the slightest little things, like you said, can trigger it. Just a simple picture or something someone says, it can literally trigger that. Because I know a moment I did break down and I heard God clear as day, but He used my mom's voice and she said, "You have to let it go because it's not your weight to carry anymore." And I'm like, I have to do this. But God was telling me to let certain things go. And sometimes some of us, and I'm gonna say all of us, we feel like we have to carry for others, or we have to carry a certain weight for others and be strong. And a lot of people look at me all the time and say, "Oh, Sherry, you so strong." And a lot of times I'm just trying to see how in the heck I'm gonna make it through this moment.
Right.
Like literally, I'm quiet because I'm trying to make it through this moment. Everybody defines strength differently. I'm going to end it on that note. I'll thank you guys so much from the bottom of my heart of
Thank you for having us.
sharing your story with everyone on tonight. I pray and that someone was blessed by it, that they heard it. I really do, and that it will help them. I did not go to counseling. I know Crystal had mentioned counseling. I do encourage for those who think they need counseling. I do encourage that. We do encourage you here at Thursday Love to go and see a counselor. I didn't go see a counselor for my mom and my sister's situation, but I did go see a counselor when I lost my daughter. So, it helps. It's very necessary. So if you have that support system that can love you through it, then let that support system love you through it. It's okay to tell people how to love you when you're grieving. Because I noticed up here, everybody responds differently. Some people say, "Well, I didn't want to bother you because I was told not to bother people when they lose somebody." Some people say, "Well, some people overdo it where they text and they call 24/7." It's okay to let people know. You don't have to text, you don't have to call, or if not, I just need you to be present. You ain't got to say a word. I just need your body. You know what I'm saying? Those type of things are very helpful to communicate to some people, because as Crystal stated, some people say the dumbest things when you lose someone. They try their best. It's good intentions. Their heart is pure from it, but some of them anyway. And they come out with the dumbest things that they can say. But all we can do is try our best to help them in their ignorance at the moment. Yes. I love you guys. I thank everyone who came on tonight. Whoever I saw was a lot of shares. Thank you for sharing this. Thank you for being my co-host tonight and sitting with me.
Yes.
That is TJ's child. Thank y'all for making the last Thursday Love of this season enjoyable for me. TJ will be up here. TJ will be up here next week with the Father's Edition on his own for Father's Day, preparing for Father's Day, and then we'll take our break of for the summer, and we'll be back when school starts, pretty much.
Oh.
So we love. We're breaking up again. This internet has acted up all night. We love you guys. Y'all have a great night. Y'all be safe this weekend. Y'all be blessed. Love y'all.
Y'all
Love
be
ya.
safe, y'all.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thursday love. Da, 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 da.